The next thing is the fitting of the brake cam, together with the lever, the spring and the brake pads, of course.
Und natürlich mit den Bremsbelägen einbauen.
There is another peculiarity here with BFA engines. The brake cam of the BFA engine needs to be slightly shorter than original. It needs to be shortened to 95 mm. You may either use an original one and shorten the cam yourself, or you may buy it readily modified. I'll now add grease to the O-rings. The good thing is, the O-rings are included in the set. You do not need to buy them separately. No paper. I'll go and get some. For the lever of the brake, I'll use an original Piaggio one. Okay, now I need to add the split pin. That's always one of these lovely mini pins, which goes in here. Small hole. That's where the pin needs to go through. I now bend the pin. Take care to remove any excess grease. Now, some brake cleaner. Grease and brake drum is a shit combination. That's it. So now we can fit the brake pads. These are our ZIP Performance brake pads, which I have prepared already. Here are the shoes fitted, and there's some copper grease on the brake pads. Important, copper grease on the brake studs and cam to make sure that A, the pads move easily, and B, don't squeal. Please, again, keep in mind, there are people who use plain grease here. I am not brave enough for that. Do use copper grease. Then there's the spring. Here the return spring for the brake pads, which I hooked into both pads. Then I first fit the top one, and after that the bottom one. There you go, a careful punch, and job's a good one. Last now is to fit the O-rings to the brake studs. They make sure the brake pads do not wander off. Next up is the lay shaft of the gearbox. This again is a BFA special. The thread on the lay shaft needs to be shortened by 1.2 millimeters. We do offer that ready to fit, hence I will do that myself now. Here's the new lay shaft, and I will quickly grind down those 1.2 millimeters. Between 119.6 and 119.8. That should do the trick. Now relax a bit. The same for the vernier caliper. Next up now is fitting the lay shaft. I'll push it in here. Now the bearing from the other side. That may require some convincing and force. Circle it. Wham! Job done. And now, this here is a part that's a bit tight with the BFA engine. That's why the shortened lay shaft is necessary. There's more meat here, and I will see whether I will manage to get this to fit this straight away as it should be. Almost there. Surprise, but not quite. Ah, there we go. The good old trial of patience with the needles. 21 needles. I personally prefer the grease trick. That's, I add liberal amounts of grease to the lay shaft and then I add the needles. There are other strategies, like using a magnet from the other side of the lay shaft. I like grease though, if only because that's how I've been doing it for years. I always count to make sure I do not drop a needle or something like that.
20 und 21.
In principle, we're almost ready to close the engine halves. What's missing now is the main shaft, crankshaft, and everything related to the kickstart. That's what I will do now. What is a bit special again is that the BFA engine only has one stop for the kickstart, and this is pushed into place here. This is a Vespa PK item, which, as you can see, is a bit too tall for this here. That means you will simply have to shorten it a bit for it to fit properly. This is best done with a cutter knife. For that, I simply hold it there the wrong way round, mark it so that I know where to cut, and now the thing is pushed into place here. There you go, done. Next up, the kickstart shaft. I'm using a rally type kickstart. That means I can either use a T5 kickstart, or a vintage kickstart, or a rally kickstart. That's why these shafts are my favorite. And to make sure I can fit it now, I will spray it with grease into the bearing and onto the all seal. That's just for everything to slide home nice and easy. What's missing still is the spring. Best make sure you don't have greasy fingers or grease on the spring. If everything is clean and not slippery, it all is straightforward enough. Wham! Job done. To close the crankcase, it is easier to have the kickstart fitted. This here is not the right kickstart. I'll simply slip it onto the shaft though. It's a P-range start, but I haven't got anything else to hand, and for quickly fitting things, it will do. Theoretically, you may use any kickstart you want on the BFA engine. In reality, it is a bit of a tight spot, up here between kickstart and fan duct here. Hence, we do offer a modified kickstart. That here is a nut, which sits in a recess and thus lower with enough room for the kickstart to move when fitted.
Den Kickstarter auch im verbauten Zustand bewegen kann.
Up to now, that's only temporarily fitted. It's not supposed to stay permanently. Next port of call, the main shaft. The main shaft is easy to fit into this bearing here. I'll take a piece of wood for the engine to rest on. That makes things easier. The main shaft is a sliding fit in this bearing. Still, it may require some convincing. Light taps should do the trick. If not better, use the brake drum to pull it home. Don't use excessive force with the main shaft. The worst thing you can do is to hit the disc here. That's the disc of the groove in which the slider of the selector box slides. This is quite sensitive, easy to whack out of line, and then it will jump out of gear. Here we go, I'll try my luck. Watch out for the gears. Wham! Almost there. With the hand alone. That's the good bit about the tool. It pushes on the shaft, not on the disc. So it's quite safe to use for the last couple of millimeters. You hear that? The sound has changed, so better stop whacking. That means the shaft sits properly in its bearing, perfectly positioned in the case. Now it's only two things left to do in the small half. That's the crankshaft and the kickstart gear with its spring. I'll start with the crankshaft. Again, I'll apply some grease to seal and bearing. As I have already said, the peculiar thing with the BFA engine is that the non-floating bearing is in the small half of the crankcase. I'll use something to prop this up. For the crankshaft, use nothing more than very light taps with a rubber mallet, and that's only for positioning things. And now, I will pull it home into the bearing from the other side. A dab of grease onto the bearing is never wrong. If everything goes as it should, you should be able to lock the crank with your hand only. What if it does not? Well, then not. See, there it goes. So, it did work locking the crank just by hand. That's always a good sign. The sealing lip of the oil seal also is where it should be. That's something to always take care of. Sometimes that's not easy to see underneath the pulling tool. If you use some grease though, that usually works smoothly. Okay, these are the most relevant components in the engine. What's missing now is the kickstart gear and the spring which holds the kickstart gear in place. Or more like, the spring that presses the kickstart gear against the lay shaft for it to engage. There are two ways to do that. Either you jam the kickstart gear behind the kickstart quadrant, like this. You take the spring, put it in here, and then you jam the kickstart gear in here. I'm too clumsy for that, it does my head in. The other option is to put the kickstart gear here on the lay shaft. Fit the spring here in the crankcase and push the kickstart down to have the gear pass through the teeth, and I push everything home then. To do that, I have to secure the spring in the crankcase. That first, and second, I need to have a kickstart in place so that I can actually move things. To secure the spring in the small case half, there are two options. Some people use grease, others glue the spring into place with silicone. Some are scared that silicone may end up somewhere where it is not supposed to be. I'm not scared, hence I use silicone. See, and now the beast will hopefully stay in place. Before I close the engine, I need to do two things. First, I spray on some grease onto the contact surface of the kickstart to make sure it is lubricated right from the start. Some prefer engine oil, absolutely an option. Another peculiarity when compared to original Vespa or Piaggio engines is that the cases do not require a gasket. That means you simply take some gasket sealant and apply it on both halves, let it cure for a bit, and then you close the halves. Before I do that, I will add some grease to the oil seal to make sure the crank goes through smoothly. And oh yes, there is another small gimmick for the BFA engine. It comes with this small bushing. This is only for the closing of the engine to make sure the oil seal lip does not fold over. So when I now have the small case half in my hand, it is a bit tricky to juggle with everything. And to make sure I do not damage the oil seal while doing this, there is this small bushing. I'll add a dab of grease again. And then everything goes together like this. Then I'll add the sealant. Do make sure your gasket surfaces are free of oil and grease. That's essential if you want the engine to be nice and tight later. For that reason, I always wipe things down with brake cleaner. I've done this here already. Still, I'll do it again to demonstrate things. The idea is to have nothing on there that may possibly prevent the sealant from sticking in its place. Or, worse still, to have something stuck between the two halves that prevents them from closing properly. There are different sealants which work well. You may either use a silicone-based sealant, like the Würth, which we stock. This Loctite 574 is ideal though. It is designed as a surface sealant, so I will take this now. The cool thing about this Loctite is, it's very nice to work with its tipped nozzle here. Now the same for the large half.
Noch auf der großen Motorhälfte. So, das müsste jetzt
okay, that should be it. Now I will close the two halves.
beiden Gehäusehälften zusammen.
I keep checking whether everything still rotates freely, looking good. Crankcase is almost closed. I prefer to take my time and I double check to make sure everything is in place, instead of forcing everything together with the engine bolts. That's always dangerous because you easily destroy things. Cool, that looks good to me. Everything spins freely, and now I'll simply add the crankcase bolts. Problem is, for the BFA we use 4 different lengths. Best is to remember which length goes into which hole, or to mark things. That makes life a lot easier. Of course, I didn't do anything like that, so I have to try. The bolts are fitted without any washers or any other odd split washers. The reason is simple. It's supposed to stay in place, and you do not need that stuff for that. Make sure the cantering bushing here is properly seated. The engine has 2 of these. The internal one is invisible once you have closed the engine. The outer one is here. Do make sure it is seated properly. Even though it is not secured by a bolt, once you tighten up the engine case, it cannot go anywhere. It stays where it needs to stay. Looking good, and looking good here too. I always try to torque down these engine bolts evenly for the engine to close nicely. Now, wipe off the excess sealant. That's the bottom end of the engine sorted. The next steps are the barrel, clutch, ignition and inlet manifold. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this, leave us a like and press the bell. Bye then. See you soon.